Hello and welcome to the Leadership Edge. My name is Ted Gorski. The Leadership Edge focuses on leadership topics that affect leaders on a day-to-day basis. We talk about these areas to help you become better leaders in what you do. My name is Ted Gorski. I am the host of the business of the Leadership Edge. And what I do is I do leadership coaching for individuals and leaders in organizations. And we bring up topics that affects you on a daily basis. Now today's show is a little bit different. I was talking to Producer Bill and I said, Producer Bill, we do have some slides today, but they're minimal. And he was like, yes! Because he hates when I bring in a lot of slides, but I know you love them because you've told me. And by the way, how does this blue look on me? I look on the screen, perfecto. Right, Producer Bill? Does it look good?
Absolutely.
Fabulous, fabulous. Today's show is about alignment. And you're saying, Ted, alignment. What are you talking about? Well, alignment is very key in leadership. And here's a little equation that I have put together that I use in my coaching of leaders. Alignment equals words plus behaviors plus actions. You're like, wow, magnificent. I showed this to Producer Bill, and he said, trademark. And I'm with you there. But let's talk about these. We're going to break each of these down on an individual basis. But let's first talk about the importance of alignment. Why do we need it as leaders? Well, just as a chiropractor, when you go in to get your back adjusted, right, it's out of alignment. What the chiropractor is doing is snapping it back into place. It's putting it aligned properly so you can do your day-to-day activities. Alignment is really about making sure you are staying in a line. Why is that important for leaders? Well, alignment is important because the people you lead are looking at you, are expecting you to model the behaviors that are important to them, to the team, and to the organization. So a lot of my coaching, and when I coach leaders, is there's a lot of misalignment. And when they're talking about what's important to them, when they talk about leading individuals, it is important that the behaviors, the actions, and the words they use are all in proper alignment with each other. And a lot of the coaching that I find is that a leader is misaligned. And what I do is get them back in alignment to make sure that what they're saying matches. So again, alignment equals words plus behaviors plus actions. In each of these three, on the right-hand side of that equation, are vital. If one of those is missing, if one of those don't connect, alignment is not there. So you say, well, what's important with it? Why do I need it? Well, if your actions and behaviors and the words you use do not really depict what is really happening, and you have misalignment, in essence, what's going to happen as a leader is you're going to lose integrity. That's a vital piece on leadership. And in my coaching, my goal is to really get the alignment set up so the leader has proper integrity in what they're doing. So let's break these down into each of the various sections. Words. Let's start with that. Words is the language you use. And again, in the alignment equation, words are one of the factors that help build alignment. So what are we talking about? Well, the words you use are going to be really impactful to the people you lead. In other words, if you're saying to me that you are a positive individual as a leader, you should be using positive language to really help and motivate people. So you want to talk to people on in a level that's going to get them to be very positive in what you're facing. So for example, if there's a problem, you want to talk about challenges. If you're going to talk about really having someone look at a problem from a positive perspective, you have to use positive language. You can't say, hey, you screwed up. Like Producer Bill tells me all the time, you screwed up. And I'm like, you're missing alignment. He's like, what? Right? Alignment in terms of your words are very vital. So what you want to do, if someone does screw up, you say, hey, listen, let's look at it to see what went wrong. Let's look at what happened when you hit the particular problem. Why did you zig when you should have zagged? And a lot of the things that leaders do is they don't use the proper words. that really get to the heart of what people are experiencing. So words in the language you use are very, very important as part of the alignment package. When I hear leaders say, especially in politics, that I'm a collaborator, I go across the aisle. Well, okay, well, that's fine in terms of you're saying this, but what do your behaviors and actions show? What language do you use? What words do you use that shows that you're a collaborative person? What language do you use that really shows people that, in fact, you are a collaborator? Because part of collaboration is listening and being open to divergent views. Do your words show that? Do you demonstrate that? So words are part of that equation that makes up alignment. So that's the first one. And I'll tell you, in terms of words, words are important, but what I usually see when I experience and talk to leaders is that their words are very, what I call, cheap. You can say that you are approachable. You can say that you're collaborative. You can say you're a great listener. But the words are probably the part of this equation that doesn't hold a lot of weight, per se, because part of it is really the behaviors and actions, which we're going to talk about next. So next, the behaviors, which is the reactions to a given situation. So for example, if you say you're someone who's a great listener, part of your behaviors should be, when you're sitting down and talking to someone, are you open to new ideas? Do you listen to other people's views? Or do you rush into articulating your views? So behaviors are an important piece here in terms of developing the reaction to that given situation. The behaviors is what's outwardly seen by people. So people are going to judge you based on what they see and how you approach things. In my work with leaders, a lot of the leaders I work with usually will say things like, hey, I'm approachable, I have an open door policy. Well, that's great. You kind of articulate that by the words, but what behaviors do you show? When you tell me you have an open door policy, but you close your door all the time, that's when we have misalignment, because they didn't pass the test. Okay, so they all, on the right-hand side of the equation, the words, the behaviors, and the actions must all line up appropriately in order for alignment to happen. So part of this whole thing about behaviors is how you are reacting to a particular situation. So what others are seeing is the outward behaviors. So it's important that when you are saying that you are, for example, open, your behaviors must show that. If you're saying you're a great listener, what are those behaviors that make you show that you're a great listener? Well, part of it is being able to sit down and hear divergent views. Part of it is really asking insightful questions and maybe finding out what exactly the other person is really thinking about. So part of the behaviors thing is what people see. So that's the second part that make up this particular equation. The third is the actions, and I show that as code of conduct. This is the conduct that you are using and symbolizing when you are working with others. So for example, if you say to me as a leader that, I expect people to put in a hard day's work for a hard day's pay. Well, what is the code of conduct there? Does it mean that you as a leader say that you want people to finish the job before they leave? And how do you demonstrate that? Well, what happens if you start leaving early on some days? Just because you're the leader. Well, if you're demonstrating that in your conduct, how is that in alignment to what you're saying? So part of the conduct is your actions that you're taking. If you're leaving at 2 o'clock every day, is that really in alignment saying that you expect people to put in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay? This is a really important piece. Each of these three must be evident in order for alignment to occur. So, if we bring back the equation and really talk about this a little bit further, let's bring up some examples so you can see why and how this particular equation works. So let's say you're a leader working with me, and you say to me, Ted, let's go back to my earlier particular example. I'm a collaborator. My job is to really work with others. We hear politicians say this all the time. And what's funny is when I start hearing politicians talk about how they reach across the aisle, that they're a collaborator. Let me just say this, as a leadership coach, I stay neutral. And I'm an independent. Let's go on the record. I'm an independent. I'm not affiliated with any of these parties, just to let you know. But I look at it from a perspective of this equation. Let's first talk about it. Okay, they say the words. I'm a collaborator. I reach across the aisle. Okay, that's what they're saying. So now let's look at what's their behaviors. Do they actually go and meet with other party members of the opposite party? Do they go and seek out and understand what the other viewpoints are? Do they seek, as Stephen Covey used to say, to understand? Do they go and create bills with other people to become more bipartisan? See, part of this is really modeling, and this is kind of what we're talking about here, is what have they done to model this behavior? And lastly, we look at the actions. What actions do they take? What's their code of conduct? Well, I would think if someone is a collaborator, they're not someone who's yelling and screaming in the assembly saying that the other party are idiots. They're not screaming and saying and name-calling the other party, saying they're a type of party that looks at and says that party's out to kill grandma, kill babies, or whatever. That's not conduct becoming of a collaborator. So my point is here is when you look at each of these three things on the right-hand side, the words, behaviors, and actions, by adding those up, if they all are in sync, in other words, if the words, behavior, and actions all line up, then you have alignment. Now, that's a vital piece here, because if we don't have an alignment, as a leader, we don't have integrity. And if we don't have integrity, your ability to lead others becomes even more difficult. So it's important for you to really realize the importance of this equation. What I do in my coaching is I will start here to make sure that whatever action we're looking at or whatever issue, the leaders I work with have alignment. And I will go through each and every one of the elements on the right-hand side of that equation, the words, the behaviors, and the actions. And I ask the person I'm coaching, do these add up? Now, you can call this modeling, if you will, because as leaders, we model behavior. We model behavior that's expected of us and of others. And as I tell the leaders I coach, the actions, the behaviors, and the words are used are held to a higher standard. So that if you're modeling this, if you're saying that your people on your team need to be here, I am going to be holding you on this level. And that's normally what's expected on leaders. So for you, I want you to realize those three. Now, I bring up the collaborator example because I always hear politicians say that, and it just gnaws at me. It makes me so angry when I hear this, because part of it is there's no history, maybe, for this particular leader who says this, who's actually done it. And you know what? If they don't have the actions to show it, if they don't have the behaviors which kind of make us believe in what they do, then the words, as I said earlier, this is why the words are not given as much weight, in my eyes, in regards to this equation. So producer Bill, if we can put that equation back up, I hold behaviors and actions at a higher standard and give them more weight than I do the words, because the words are simply hollow, in my view. So for you, as up-and-coming leaders, it's important that you look at this equation and say to yourself and ask yourself, do you have alignment? Do you marry up to what you see here? Do your words, behaviors, and actions become in alignment to what you're modeling? And for our young leaders out there, especially on sports teams, it's important that your behaviors and actions and words line up as well. Let's look at Tom Brady, for example, when we look at leadership on a football team. Okay? He uses very positive words whenever you hear him interviewed. He talks about the team. He talks about working hard. He talks about focusing on the next team. He doesn't use any disparaging words against the other team. Now, I understand that might be Bill Belichick, but if you play this out, the words he uses are very positive. If things didn't go well on one game, the next game he's talking about, okay, we got to work better in perfecting that play. I got to work better in making a better pass. So he does use words in a very positive way. And if you listen to Tom Brady, you hear that his language is always in a positive vein. Now let's talk about his behaviors. What do we see in terms of Tom Brady's behaviors as quarterback? Well, it's known that he's usually in very early in the morning during the week when he's reviewing film. He reviews film, matter of fact, on the plane after, if there's an away game. What he does is that he will watch game film of the next opponent on the way back. He will also spend more time when they get back in the film room to review the team's defensive capabilities. So his behaviors is that he's there early. He'll go on the field early in practice and maybe practice some throws. So he gets there very early in the morning and he shows his abilities in that way. Then his code of conduct, his actions, what do you see? Well, his code of conduct is he'll stay as late as he needs to get the job done. He gets there early, if not sooner than anyone else there. So when he talks about, well, we all have to work harder, would you say that Tom Brady meets that? Absolutely. Tom is in alignment to each of those particular three things we talked about. So then when he talks to a player, it says, listen, you need to go in and work a little bit harder. The player's going to look and realize that Tom Brady's in alignment because he's not throwing up smoke up the person's you-know-what. So it's important for leaders to really understand, and Tom's a great example on sports teams that talks about the alignment of that particular equation. So for the few young viewers out there who are looking at their leadership, if you're on a sports team, why don't you look at these three and say to yourself, how do you model these? And for the leaders out there that are in organizations, ask yourself, how do your words, how do your behaviors, and how do your actions really mirror up to what you're preaching and what you're saying in the organization? Is it an alignment? Is it really what you're expecting? Is it what other people are seeing? Now, I'll say it honestly, for a lot of the leaders that I work with, they don't realize that they're in misalignment. They don't realize, and they think that their words, behaviors, and actions actually match up. But when I work with them, they start to realize that maybe it's not as aligned as they think they are. So I challenge you to really look in each of these three areas and ask yourself, are you in alignment? Because if there's a fracture in any of those three, words, behaviors, or actions, you will not have alignment. And if you're missing alignment, you're missing a very, very critical part in your leadership. Matter of fact, it's probably affecting your leadership on a negative basis. So I challenge you to kind of look at that. Now, this is a great topic, and again, this is one of the things I start with all my leaders on, as I mentioned earlier in the show, whenever I'm coaching them. Because to me, this is a very big foundation for you. So your action plan is to analyze yourself in these three areas and ask yourself, do you have alignment? So again, thanks for listening to the Leadership Edge. If there's anything we can do at Get Your Edge to help you with your leadership skills, be more than happy to work with you by looking at www.getyouredge.com. So thanks again for watching the Leadership Edge this week. See you next time.